Morning.
Thank you so much for joining the Scale Up Africa Survival Episode 2. What we have today is a conversation. We have two parts today. We have a conversation with some big hitters in the fintech space and the African tech and investment space. And so we'll have a conversation about where we are as an ecosystem and where the investment conversation can maybe go to create something a bit new and more fit for purpose for our SMEs to be able to grow. And also the second part will be a masterclass by Andrew Takyi-Appiah, which is the founding partner of Zeepay, one of our biggest fintechs, to just talk through the Zeepay experience and how they've managed to integrate certain features in their business model and to help you guys with some of your business planning requirements. So I think we'll jump straight in. We're a little bit behind on time, so we'll jump in with a bit of introduction from the team. We'll start with Andrew Takyi-Appiah for a quick intro in terms of your background, what you've been doing, and your thoughts on the current situation we're in.
All right, thank you, Amma, and thank you, everybody. Delighted to be here. Good morning once again. So in terms of background, I don't know. I always get confused what of that. So I'm a banker. I worked in the industry for a while, both UK, Ghana, Africa, and a few other places. I used to be head of retail banking for GT Bank. If I was actually the founding head of retail, then I moved to Ecobank to become the transaction banking head for Africa. Sorry, East and Southern Africa. Then I moved to PwC. In Ecobank, I was also the transformation strategy manager. So I actually did the transformation that Ecobank embarked on. Then I moved to Pricewaterhouse, where I was head of BD and strategy consulting. And from there, I went in-house to do a job with UT Bank. And then after that, I left to Glyco. Glyco, I was at Glyco Capital for a bit. I was actually the MD and the director for transformation of Glyco Capital. And at the same time, the portfolio manager for Zeepay at the time.
Let's talk more about Zeepay. Let's talk more about Zeepay and what you guys are doing.
Okay, so basically, in terms of Zeepay, what we do today is we see ourselves as a mobile financial services company. We're fintech into MFS. As an MFS, our first branded product was remittance into mobile wallets. We've been doing that for some time now. We passed our 1 million customers sometime last year. Today we have about, thank you. Today we have about maybe about 1.8 million active users. And we're in many jurisdictions. We're in 23 markets. Out of the 23 markets, we have a presence in about 5 of them. Our objective is to become the geography MFS of Africa. What I mean by geography is to be able to have footprints across the entire continent, doing the same thing. So in every market, we'll have a license today. In most markets, we have no objection to operate from the central banks or in partnership with banks, except for Ghana, where we've just been given our license to operate as a mobile bank, which we intend to launch probably in the next 6 weeks. So we'll invite all of you. So this is what we've been up to.
Thanks, Andrew. Erick, Osiakwan.
Thanks. Thanks, Amma and Olivia, for putting this together. So I'm Erick Osiakwan. I run Chanzo Capital. Chanzo is a venture and growth firm focused on the King's countries. We domiciled in Mauritius, based out of Accra. We have a Nairobi and Joburg office. We've done 16 investments so far. Most of them start as angel investments, wound up into the fund. 4 of them have failed, 4 are profitable, 4 are break-even, 4 are early revenue. So we have this 4x4 track record. And then our next fund is focused more on growth. So the idea is to sort of now take these companies into the rest of Africa and then create them, turn them into multinationals, hopefully then exit them. So we are now going to test our second thesis, which is the growth thesis.
Yeah, that's great and very relevant to Scale Up Africa's objectives as well. So we're very keen to hear from you in terms of how you will embark upon the journey and get more companies to scale across borders on the continent. Thanks so much, Erick. We'll come back to you shortly. Erick, Yong.
Oh, hi.
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, I'm a co-founder and CEO of GreenTec Capital. We are an investment company that focus on co-investment and venture building in terms of operational support as investment model. We have implement the result for equity model, which was to make available operational experts to support companies in the executions and being rewarded on delivery of those executions. We are the premier investor in African startup in Germany. We have, I think, so far invest in more than 20 companies. Out of the, I think that's almost 30, I would say. And we still have in our portfolio 20 companies. Most of those companies, if I look now to the portfolio we have, most of those companies are now have revenue. We had some quite good result in terms of performance of the company. We are focusing on digital agriculture and a little bit of energies. And we also, in parallel, run an activity of support for development organizations who want to have the part of the fund support by a more in-depth technical assistance.
Great, thank you, Erick. Ammin.
Hi, my name is Ammin Youssouf, so I'm the co-founder of Afrobytes. We are based. Our job is to try to give global stage to the African tech support in any way the African startup. We are not based on the continent, so we try to do the job out of the continent, connecting them sometimes with large group companies at our events, sometimes trying to gather around the table people like Erick and other investors and try to be together to figure out how we can build this industry. And basically, I'm in the digital activities since the late 90s. So basically that's my third major crisis after 2000, which was a hit hard. And 2008 was like, well, comparing to 2000, it's okay. But now this one, whew, my God, this is a tsunami, okay? So even for people who have lived other crises, we're like, okay, this one is like huge. So, and we've been hit hard because we are doing events, okay? So my activities are like this in like instantly. So because we are serial entrepreneurs, at the same time, we have pivot very rapidly. So now we are working on more about consulting and we are launching soon new products because we have shifted very rapidly. So the Afrobytes you know now, in 1 month from now, it's going to be different.
Yeah, I think everyone's in a mode of change at the moment. I'm an angel investor and I've seen a lot of ecosystem activity over the past 8 years working from Ghana, but we have clients in Kenya, Rwanda, Nigeria, and it's been very interesting to see how the dynamics of the inflows into the country have been changing over the years. Bigger volumes, bigger ticket sizes, everyone's obsessed with funding rounds, a lot of DFIs involved in the mix. But I've always been perturbed by the fact that, why don't we just focus on the customer and building profitable businesses? I mean, it's not really rocket science, but I'm interested to hear what your conversations have been, Ammin, and obviously Erick and Andrew, about from investors about the future of investment into Africa. I mean, we have the likes of Goldman Sachs investing in startups in Africa, which is an interesting dynamic. So what are your thoughts on how investment into the continent's SMEs, and especially tech, but SMEs generally, will be impacted by this crisis? Maybe Erick, Yong, you could take this first.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think that when it comes to investment, I try to see it in 3 buckets, and especially in the actual context. I think that there was a lot of effort and we focused a lot on early companies that they don't have any revenues. And I think that the actual crisis there would not so much change their status. That's it's going to be hard for them as it was before. And what they're going to do, they're going to shift their model, because that's kind of the resilient skills that we have developed in Africa. So they're going to change their model, and they're going to try to adapt and try to see what works and what's the new trends. I see the other category with the other extremes are those who are like who raised some Series A's and had some liquidities and had a little bit of money. And they had, they still have a little bit of money on their account. For me, they are kind of a very big winner, because they can still manage, if they structure well their organization, they can still manage to see opportunities that's going to happen, and because the competition is going to leave space. But for me, the big losers, and that's very unfortunate, are all the companies that just started to be profitable, start to have an impact on the economy, and they've demonstrated that the business model is running, but now they don't have any more. The market is just stopped due to confinement and the slowdown of the economy, and they don't have any more revenue now to be able even to pay the cost, and then so they are exposed to lose the people. They're exposed to go back to where they fight so much, and I think that is a very serious situation, because those organizations represent actually the success of all the enabler of the ecosystems, because they've been like pulled out of the situations. They show that you can go out of this valley of death, and I think that those one are the one that I think that we should give a special attention to. And in terms of investment, when you look at what's happening globally, you see that valuation has been like it's dropping down everywhere. Everybody's trying to have some cash and getting cash in. So I think that now we need to go back to more basic questions. Does that business has a meaning? Not like moving on terms of, oh yes, I want to have a big valuations, and everybody trying to follow that. So we have to go back to what the real business, the meaning of the business. We have to go back to more collaborations. We believe strongly into co-investment, and that was not something that was spatially supported by everybody. Everybody was trying to get his own deal and the best deal, etc. And I think that nowadays we should look for more collaboration, more perspective, and definitely for more involvement in helping the company in their operations, because those are our times, and every decisions can have impact. Yeah.
Thank you, Erick. Erick, Osiakwan.
All right. So we see the effect of COVID-19 sort of in three segments of our portfolio, and we think that there are three types of businesses that we see in the spectrum of investment. So there's what we call virtualized businesses, and what we call mobility, and then between that is companies that try to connect those two. So when you take virtualized businesses, these are businesses that are basically taking people online primarily. So everything that you're doing is online. So in our portfolio, we have eCampus is one of the companies that does that, which is an edtech company. And then any company that is taking you online, right? And then there's the mobility companies that are companies that, need to be doing stuff, moving stuff physically, right? They're connecting, so we have companies like Forhe, FinAccess, and then you have companies that sit between the two, which is trying to connect virtual with mobility. So you in our portfolio have companies that are doing e-commerce, so Haptel, Zuzi, and Pharmaline, and these type of companies. So the effect that you see in terms of this COVID situation is that the virtualized companies are taking off, followed by the semi-virtualized companies. And then the mobility companies are really hard hit. Yeah. So those companies are really grinding to a halt in some ways. And so when we looked at our portfolio, we have most of our investments in the mobility companies, right? And then we have a few companies in the middle, and then we have very little companies in virtualized services. And the interesting thing is that most investors will tell you that EdTech is a hard space to invest in. Actually, people always question why we invested in Gyampo. But part of it is the entrepreneur with back Cecil, who is a great guy.
He's a great guy.
Very entrepreneurial, very persistent.
Very hardworking, yeah.
His persistence and hard work is paid off. Virtually, his time has come for him to shine. But that's one of the things that we're learning from this COVID situation is that sectors that are before were not sexy will suddenly become sexy, right? And then things that we thought were very sexy will not become sexy anymore. So travel tech, we have some investments in travel tech, and everybody likes travel tech, Hotel Online, NetSquare, and all these companies have suddenly come out. So we're going to be in a world where virtualization is going to become the new normal. And we think that this is going to change the thinking of investors and how they look at portfolio construction, how they look at capital deployment, and how they support businesses. The second anecdote to that is that we have always believed in getting businesses to become profitable. We as a firm fundamentally believe, and this comes from our sort of entrepreneurial background. We believe that entrepreneurs must control the business. They must have the majority position. We want them to wake up every day feeling that is their business, right? So we try to push companies that we invest in to go towards becoming profitable much, much earlier, as opposed to relying on capital from investors to keep growth. So we still want you to grow, but we want you to also keep at the back of your mind the need to break even and to have a sustainable business. Because we believe that your business is, and this goes again the norm of Silicon Valley and the big investors, right? So there's the big teams that focus on growth and use investor capital to achieve that growth, no matter what the business unit economics are. And we believe that in Africa you cannot do that, partly because there's a huge undersupply of capital. And the reason that growth model works in Silicon Valley and other technopoles is because there's an oversupply of capital. And so when you have that oversupply of capital, then there is really less reason to focus on unit economics and breaking even. But if you're in a horizon where you don't have that, then the sooner you get to that, the better. So this is the ethos of our investing strategy. So we try to move companies towards that. And we think that the companies that are surviving our portfolio in terms of maybe the mobility companies are the companies that have been shifting towards profitability, right? So once you get into that level, break-even profitability, in a crisis like this, you can most likely have some level of buffer to survive. Because suddenly what happens in a situation like this is introduces uncertainty. And most investors sort of hold back when there's uncertainty. Well, some investors take advantage of uncertainty. So if you take the capital markets, people say, look, this is the time to really, invest and buy stocks cheap because the market's going to rebound and then you're going to make your returns. But then the investors will say, no, I don't know where the future of the world is. So I want to wait for things to stabilize, right? So our principle around pushing the entrepreneurs to get to sustainability early, we think has helped a lot of our portfolio companies, and it's going to become something that investors will start paying attention to. We've seen the fall of WeWork. I mean, SoftBank is going down 17 billion. For the first time, they're going to declare a loss of 17 billion in the fiscal year. I mean, to think that a fund like SoftBank is struggling, right? And to think that all these great companies that have been pushed before are sort of the limelight, the companies to look up to are all struggling, right? So the question of sustainable business models and getting towards profitability is going to be a conversation into the future post-COVID-19.
Right. I mean, so what are your take? What's your take on rebooting the funding situation for African entrepreneurs? Obviously, you convene a whole lot of investors, mainly from Europe, I imagine. But what are your thoughts on how this might be a good time to reset the types of investment and the conversations that investors are having?
Okay, that's a paradox, but I think that for small companies, it's going to be the tough period, but that's going to be also a period of creativity. From my own experience, I started my first company at just right after the internet bubble in 2000. It was so great to start a company. That's a paradox. In 2008, I had the biggest growth for this company in 2008. It was a small company. At this time, we were 10 at the beginning of 2008. And by less than 2 years, I doubled the team. So actually, that's a paradox. But I would say that because we are startup and small business, we are also very agile. We have said rapidly that we are able to do this pivot rapidly in the African tech ecosystem. I'm working right now with a company in Nigeria, a fintech. They have changed their model in 1 week, and we are just publishing online, and we are refocusing the clients, and easy. So it's a period. People shouldn't panic first. It's important to stay with your community, focus on your business. Try also to, like Erick says that I'm co-investing. So you have to do something with something else. So with someone else, you have to find the right partnership, because you cannot be alone in that crisis. You have to hunt in packs. This is where you have to be with other people. Because if you are on your own, alone, people will forget you first. So that's my first remark. After you are talking about Europe. Okay, how can I say that? That's a real big tsunami. I mean, it's, I don't even know, because people are not prepared here to such crisis. Okay, we have so many problems in Africa, but in a way, I would say that we are quite used to have some crisis. Not like this one.
Yeah, resilience.
Okay, not like this one. But it's not like we are not, a little bit prepared to those kind of hardcore situation. But here it's like, I don't know, it's like a total change of everything. There is no normal now. It's a new normal, total. The consequence is definitely that now Africa has to change radically. We shouldn't rely only on exteriors, on the exterior to help us, like how governments are doing, like asking, can I? No, we have to really now, as Erick said, focus on the traction, focus on our clients, focus on reaching rapidly the profitability. That's very important. That's going to be the focus, and I think that now, at least at Afrobytes, we are really focusing on helping startups to really get traction as soon as possible. That's our focus right now. It's not so much about trying to do something else. It's really, and we will probably reconnect a session to work with them and create this.
Right. So Erick, Osiakwan mentioned, virtual businesses, right? And we have, everyone's talking about mobile phone proliferation in Africa. But how do we improve the way that, the consumer market uses the mobile phone to optimize that opportunity for, businesses that would serve them through the mobile sphere? Andrew, maybe you could speak to that in terms of, people, fintech and, adoption of technology and using technology in a way that is, going to create a new market for services that are virtual.
Okay, so again, thanks. I've been listening to the conversation. First of all, Erick, thumbs up, maximum respect. Erick was a demo day when we did our first presentation. They brought us to where we got to. Thanks, Erick. I didn't know you're on the call. So first of all, Amma, before I even answer you, I do agree with Erick that sustainable growth is a critical pathway right now. And companies that have strong governances or governance programs are still around because of that. I also do agree with Ammin that the time has come to look within Africa. Okay, and I saw what we did with the COVID-19 fund. It started as a conversation. Within seconds, a corporate fund, people were donating, contributions were coming through. Today we have a serious fund. Do you see what I mean? So maybe one of the call to actions, even out of this Amma, is for us to create a COVID-19 startup fund. A COVID-19 startup fund that has just about 10,000 as donations. If we get it from 2,000, that's 20 million odd, then you can help a lot of businesses stay afloat and at the same time come into the ecosystem. back to the question you asked, okay, or the conversation. I share several views, and I'll talk about it from. I think the time has come for us to stop paying too much attention on the technology and focus on the innovation. For a long time as an ecosystem, we've been just developing and developing and developing. Let's start looking at the innovation within the use cases. We already have use cases. To be quite honest with you, a lot of these use cases don't change. It's innovations we've had on the use cases that make a difference. And it's no more just about mobile money. It's about the mobile telephony itself. How can I leverage USSD? How can I leverage the apps? How can I leverage the phone itself? What can one do in the trajectory? And I think that's what you're going to see. In our part of the world, you're going to see an explosion around new use cases on mobile phone itself. And then, of course, you're also going to see a bit more innovation on the mobile money itself as well. Okay, it's no more just about fintech. It's about everything tech. InsurTech, EduTech, RegTech, AppTech, AgriTech, all of that. There's a new horizon, there's a new path. Now we need to have sustainability in that space. And hopefully some of these conversations we're having today will bring a lot of that to light. For example, if you take the space we are in, it's very clear that first we came to disrupt the cash pickup process. We've disrupted it. But we need to go beyond that. And that's a challenge to my own self and to my organization and everybody out there. We need to challenge that. If we take the traditional transfers, we need to challenge that model and ask ourselves, how do we bring utility even on the mobile phone itself? How do we start hosting marketplaces on the phone without necessarily being data driven? So these are things I guess everybody's going to look back to the back burner, thinking about what we're going to, how we're going to do it. But I want to talk about the investment component a little bit and how COVID is impacting on Africa. So look, globally, most global markets were negative interest rates. If you take Europe, predominantly it was a negative interest rate market. Then their stock exchanges have melted down, or they are still melting down. Players have crashed. Market players we never thought would crash have crashed. Okay, if you look at Airbnb has been hard hit. That was such a wonderful model 4 months ago, Amma. Today, most dangerous model you can think about.
And all the co-working spaces, we had so many co-working spaces coming up, and they're all empty now.
Yeah,
so
because I guess COVID has made it dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So what's the next realm, and where will the money go? I think you're going to see an interesting thing where investors for the first time are going to stop thinking about, okay, you need to have a certain post-revenue, you need to have a certain volume of transactions, etc. And they're going to look at models and say, okay, look, this is very opportunistic. It's got a lot of potential. Let's put some money in here. And it's going to happen more in the emerging markets. But also you're going to see a lot of domestic investors, billionaires who have serious money, who have been challenged by what has happened, looking to pump their money in the local economy. Because they've come to realize that if they don't sustain the local economy, they hurt themselves more.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point, Andrew. I'm going to interject here because for years now, I know like Erick and people like myself, and there's been, we've had the angel investment networks aplenty, but it's been very difficult to get high net worth individuals in Africa on the continent itself to invest in the next generation of startups and SMEs. So you think that this is a critical turning point for that conversation to change?
Well, I think it's not even just a critical, it has changed. Everybody who's been in lockdown for the last 6 to 8 weeks has realized that the economics of my business alone is not enough. You need an ecosystem, you need sustainability, and sustainability is 360, it's inclusive. Yeah. So all these guys with deep pockets, I don't want to mention names or whoever they are, I hope they are listening. I'm sure they're looking into things and saying, wow, if I had invested and had 20%, this will be growing, this will feed this, it will feed that, it will help my business, it will help the market. Because all of a sudden it's about the local economy. It's about sustaining local economies in moments like this. It's about building self-reliant economies, not economies that have investors coming from abroad to invest in it. It's about respecting governance so we have reserves. Because beyond COVID, if you don't have reserve, you're toast.
Right.
And that's so what you're seeing is not even so much about runways anymore. Because I can tell you, Amma, that when we finish all of this and we challenge the banks, some banks would even have liquidity squeeze
Issues,
because people have taken money home and they don't know how the money is going to come back. Because that manufacturing plant shut down for what, 8 weeks? That 8 weeks period that he shut down, he's gone. Everybody is also realized that the supply chain, the global supply chain cycles was largely influenced by players like China. Okay, and all of a sudden they see that, look, if we invest in the local economy, it will rather help us so that we have a local supply chain. We're going to build a domestic supply chain ecosystem that makes it possible for us to depend on our domestic market. Because think about it, all imports that came in November came for Christmas rush. The ones that came in December, late December, they couldn't clear them. Tell them to keep it up. They couldn't clear them. So what do you see? You see that they'll be cleared in January. That stock is finished. Forget about COVID lockdown. The stock is finished and they cannot reorder because the ports were closed. You can't even get people in companies to buy from. So all of a sudden, we're going to have a lot of shortages after the lockdown. What you're going to see in May is there's going to be a lot of shortages. Then there's going to be price hike. Then we're going to go into an inflationary period just because there's a lot more money chasing fewer goods. You see, the whole global system has changed.
Yeah.
And I think that investors are coming home and they're realizing, let's pump money locally. So you're going to see a lot of people move from seed round to Series A, just because they need to pump it in quickly and make it work. If we look at insurance has been challenged because the people who are on life insurance have been hit. They need to cash in or they need to cash out, right? If you look at auto insurances, some cars are going to park, Amma, because they don't have the money. Or they'll start buying insurance on a month-to-month basis. So you're going to see a lot of different patterns, and it's going to start to let people think it's time to invest in. I think our own government is also going to realize that, look, it's not enough to create an enabling environment. Maybe let's push private sector to do this. I also think you're going to find a lot of corporate startup. It was a big conversation 10 years ago in the global community. But today in Ghana, we're going to see it. CSC is going to be on the rise. I saw companies donate 100,000 to the COVID-19 fund. I saw people give 1 million. I saw people give 10,000. These companies are going to go back and have a rethink and say, look, why don't we have a corporate startup engagement around things that are related to our business? So if I'm an insurance company and I can have a company that does validation and verification, why don't I support them to support my business? Then in that way, I'm not dependent on myself. And if I'm hit by a pandemic, I'm okay. So I think a lot of things, and these are the things that are going to bet the new models. You see what I mean?
Right.
It's going to bet all these IoT models. It's going to bet all. It's also going to create a new trajectory for the existing models that exist. Because honestly, I don't think we put our startups to test. We've not had the opportunity to put them to test. When COVID-19 happened, I don't know if there's any tracker out there that we used. If you take the GPS post system, wonderful platform, but we haven't put it to test. If we had put it to test, when COVID-19 happened, we'll know where everybody lives, and those who need support, we can support them in a more structured manner. So I think there's going to be that rethink. How do we leverage all of this? We have the national ID. How do we leverage that to become an additional wallet that is in your pocket? You see what I mean? So it's not just about who's competing with who anymore, but how do we deepen what we're built?
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Erick Yong, I have a question from Bex, and he's asking whether you think African businesses can fill the export space made by any diversification or anti-China sentiment in the West. Because there's a whole conversation around dependence on China, and obviously the whole supply chain, global supply chain has just changed. So what do you reckon on that question?
Well, I wish that it happened, but I don't think that will happen so fast, because it's also a matter of infrastructure. It's also a matter of organizations. And in the actual time, if we were to be able to benefit from these opportunities, we will need more time and more resources. And so I think that I like the approach that Andrew had about things, because it's time to be much more down to the ground and not try to see with the what if could, what we could, or I mean, we have to see and say much more concrete, because that is what's going to help us, and that is what has built the resiliency of the African continent. And therefore, I'm not so sure that I'm not so sure that we should try to say, okay, how can we replace China at the global level. I think that we should try to see, okay, how can we try to develop things locally in order to fix the space that we're going to have, because that's in Africa. I believe that local markets, local products, this is an opportunity for them. And that's where I believe that the focus should be.
So I have a question for Ammin and Erick Osiakwan. What do you reckon are the things that we as an ecosystem can do to reduce the cost and risk of doing business in Africa as a private sector?
Erick? Oh.
Ammin.
I mean.
Oh, okay. So you are talking about reducing the risk of doing business in Africa?
Yeah.
In what sense? In terms of
the models, models that you've seen. A lot of people are looking to maybe things like micro franchising to maybe systematize business opportunities and join up supply chains, for example. So
okay.
So what models have you seen, or would you think would help to reduce the risk of doing business and increase the chance of more SMEs to successfully scale?
Okay, so it's a very large question, because we are talking about continents, so many sectors, so it's very difficult.
Yeah, sure.
To
just high level.
High level, I would say I would like to come back a little bit, because it's more or less linked to the question you had on the chat, the response of Erick, the fact that we have to be down to the ground. Okay, we have so much potential for the moment on even just transforming our product locally. For example, the chocolate, basic chocolate, is produced mainly, the ingredients are produced mainly in Ghana and Ivory Coast, but we don't have a brand, an African brand of chocolate that everybody knows on earth. So we have I don't say it's the only thing, but we haven't been so good at selling made in Africa. Okay, and I think that there is a space for that. For example, now we were supposed to launch something in New York like 1 month ago, and we are focusing for the moment in cosmetics and natural hair. And we know that, for example, there is a strong link to do between agriculture and cosmetics, because it's from farm to skincare. So there is a whole narrative to talk about here. And we were supposed to have and to focus on logistic startups operating this, because we are talking about traceability. Because now what will be very interesting here is to understand what people will want now. People want to invest. They want to buy something that has a meaning. You don't want to. No, for example, we are working right now with luxury companies. At the end of this crisis, the first thing that you will do, you won't go to a luxury store and say, "Oh, I've got my new Dolce & Gabbana bag." I mean, like, it's not what you want to do just right after this crisis. People are in a period when they ask themselves a lot of questions. So for us, being able to start transforming our product, don't forget that we have so many potential for agriculture in Africa. It's huge. It's huge. Africa, we talk about education. Erick said that, okay, all those sectors that weren't so sexy before, now we see that, okay, it's about health, it's about education, it's about agriculture, it's about the pillar of the society. this is where we have to focus. I think just to just say to people that are looking at us now, and I'm thinking about the SME, okay? If you didn't do your digital transformation before, something you should have started like 10 or 15 years ago, actually. I'm not talking about last year. I'm talking about a complete a way to think, you know? It's not about being a coder. It's about thinking as somebody digitally transformed. You know, it's not being a coder to organize a virtual conference like this. It's not being a coder to be linked with your customer on WhatsApp and Facebook or whatever. It's just a way. It's just a mindset. Okay, so here you will have more time. We are in time which is almost freezed. You will have more work. Actually, people will think that they don't have a lot of work at this moment. No, you have so much work to do right now during this crisis. You have to be agile. You have to reach your profitability very quickly, and you have to enjoy this period where everybody is frozen to also learn things. You can go online and learn so many things about things like Airtable or Notions or all those platforms that are the no-code platform that you can use to improve your business and start to understand, okay, how will I connect with my customers after? How can I start to connect with my customers? Should I start to really care about having a CRM? Okay, CRM before customer relationship management, you say, oh, that's for the startups. That's not, no, man. That's for you right now. Because now you have to discuss with your customer. How do you do that if you haven't implied this? It's also a mindset about who will you recruit now? How do you look at those young students that you are, oh, you don't have the experience, blah, blah, blah. Okay, those guys, they will help you. Those young kids, those young girls that are representing the new world. So invest in youth, invest in education, your own education, start to look at those sectors. If you are doing things like being a utility like a fintech like Zeepay is doing, maybe there is a smart move to do here. It's really about being agile.
Thanks, Ammin. Erick, Yong, what are your final takes on reducing the risk of doing business in terms of, as an investor, we're always looking for systems and processes and, everything looking tidy, and obviously digitization is a big part of that conversation. So what are your sort of final words on just doing business, on the continent and figuring out how to minimize the risk and cost of doing business from within as a company?
Well, the first thing I can say is that not everybody should start to do mask, because I mean, like one of the things that I see, I mean, like everybody is trying to jump on opportunities here and there, etc. And survival. Of course, you have to fix your business. You have to find a way to get more money. You have to get closer to your customers. You have to ask yourself, really, okay, now I have time to do all the things I could not do before. I have time to restructure myself. I want to see how can I minimize my cost, but try to think about what I can implement in order to be in a competitive situations when I go out of it. How do I want to have my business to be turned into when the crisis goes out? And that's what I think that this is the first question that people they have to do. They have to do the homework, and they have to think about that. When you want to look for profitability, it also means that you have to find a way to create more value for your customer. And the COVID crisis forced companies to ask themselves if they have been doing everything they could, so that they can justify the fact that in the context where people don't have money, they will still take money out of their pocket to put that in their hand. And I think that when you combine it with the structuring, the reorganizations of your business, then you have a better chance to go to go through that crisis. one of the things is that there's something that you cannot manage, that in any case, to maintain your business, you're going to have a need of a minimum investment. I mean, like a limited amount of cash, you know, to pay your employee, etc. So I think that, and I hope that a lot of organizations have tried to build like a stress test scenario on their cash flow, because all those things allow you to anticipate what you have to do, how you're going to do it, okay? And also being able to talk to financial parties, because today to find money, everybody turns to his network. I mean, like investors are not like looking for new opportunities. I see at the moment there's a lot of announcement of investment there, etc. Yeah. But my belief, I don't know, I was not there, but my belief is that a lot of those investments were in the pipeline. What's
of course.
Is that now what's going to happen for the new investment? People are not going to look outside. They're going to try to secure what they have. So you really have to show that you have done your own work. You have, you know, close everything, reduce everything that you can reduce, and that in that context, with a minimum of cash, you can go through. And that, I think that this should be the focus. I'm not so sure. I have one company who's doing soft skills educations, and we had a discussion in terms of how they are structured, and what we spend our time, our focus is really to discuss about, okay, what can you do more in the actual context? Now with the COVID, you know what your customer wants. The customer wants to have more money, more revenue, more collaboration, more interactions, so that they can themselves create revenue. How can you help them to do that? If then with your business and with your experience, you can extend your USP to respond to that, then I think that combined with a little bit of resilience, then you have a good chance. Right. One last thing I would like to say is that I think that it's really a key moment for organizations not to look at SMEs and startup as an investment, but more in terms of how can we manage to maintain what is existing. Because until now, we investment organizations have thought about, okay, we want to see that business, we want to see that growth. I think that it is really great, but in the next months, the question will be, what do we think is important and should be maintained, and what effort are we ready to do that to maintain? Because otherwise, there are going to be a lot of losers, and the impact in the ecosystem will also impact other businesses that are healthy, but that will be in an environment who's not running anymore.
Amma, if I may add, so we see this from a micro and a macro perspective. So the micro, within the key risk factor is still execution. Right, execution risk. Now, and that execution risk sits either with entrepreneurs, if you invest in entrepreneurs, if you're a fund manager, and help is looking at it from execution risk. So on the entrepreneurial side, the question is, how is the entrepreneur or the team executing in a situation like this, right? And what we have seen, I'll give you 3 examples. So we have seen in our portfolio, some of the CEOs in the virtualized companies like Zuzi, like hiring 100 people, new people 2 weeks ago. Okay. And these were people that had to be trained to do purchases and delivery of groceries.
Right.
And executed so excellently that the company's revenues have been doubling every day since the situation happened. Right. So that's a best case scenario. And then you see that with Haptel, where their revenues are doubling every week. Mm-hmm. Right. So that speaks to the execution risks of the team, right? Okay. That is sort of at the core of investing in entrepreneurs, right? And then we've seen the companies that are not doing very well, like, Hotel Online, the CEO has proposed a pivot to a new model. And actually tomorrow, we have a big board meeting to approve this new approach, right? So this is an entrepreneur whose business has been wiped out. And within that period has come up with a pivot, a very clear pivot, leveraging the resources that are there in the existing business to something totally new, right? That's kind of an extreme case. So you want to have entrepreneurs. So I still believe that it's still on the execution risk fundamentally. And if you're a fund manager, the same thing that your LPs are looking for. How do you execute in a period like this when things are tough? It's not a question of what is happening, but how do you react to it? And then on the macro level, I think that there are some pros that are going to be favoring Africa going forward. And I think one of the key pros, one of the key triggers of that is policy action. The fact that African leaders took the tough decision of locking down our country, I think that's a big plus that has helped Africa. In the sense that we haven't seen the impact that COVID-19 has had, most recently in the US, where people are dying in droves, right? And hopefully we are not really out of the forest here, we're kind of out of the woods, but I really hope that the African numbers are not going to be anything close to that. If you look at Ghana, our numbers have started flattening. And I think I want to give a lot of credit to our president for making a very smart decision at the right time of closing the country. And I think that he's made also a very smart decision of opening the country at the right time, begging very strongly on data. So this is where the data becomes key. And this is where our industry comes to the fore. That even with the health crisis, data becomes the basis for overcoming the challenge and making very critical policy decisions. And so one of the things that is going to happen on the macro level is that policymakers are going to be realizing that data is key. And as I say, data is the new oil. And we can see oil companies, crashing left, right, center because of COVID-19. And I couldn't believe my eyes last week when I saw that Netflix overtook ExxonMobil in the market, where they became much more valuable than ExxonMobil. So we're going to see this huge shift. And I think on the macro level, the second factor that is going to be playing to Africa's advantage, I believe it's not the nationalism, but I think it's the regionalization, the common market phenomenon. So we're going to see that suddenly, whilst I agree a lot with Andrew's point about nationalization and the localization of production and the capturing of signal market share and people looking inward, what is going to work on the back of that is that African markets are too small, but because the borders have started opening, because of the common market, you are going to see a direct correlation to regionalization. You're going to see businesses begin to move into multiple markets. And I think you see that with your business. The biggest value in remittance today is not remitting into one market. It's being able to remit into a $3 trillion market across Africa, right? So Africa is going to probably be the biggest beneficiary of this COVID-19 situation, thanks to policy action, but essentially to businesses that are leveraging the market that is created.
I'm sorry, can I just come in for a minute?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Amma.
Go ahead.
So I agree with Eric. I also think Africa is the one who's going to benefit the most. I don't think behaviors will change. Okay, post-lockdown.
Not overnight. Maybe not overnight, but maybe over time.
Yeah, I don't think behaviors will change. I think there's going to be a realization. If we're able to get into 5G by the end of the year, maybe there'll be a quantum leap, which will impact and influence behaviors.
That's wishful thinking.
Come again?
That's wishful thinking. 4G is not even here yet.
It is wishful thinking.
But yeah, best case scenario, right?
Change. But one thing that, Eric, I also want to emphasize here is that there's going to be a new way of thinking. There's going to be a natural renaissance where all these startups that were in the valley of death before all of this happened, and not even just the SMEs also go into valley of death anyway. They're going to find a way of surviving. If you take an absolute 100%, a good 15% stand a chance of surviving. Another 10% stand a chance of fighting back. Another 10% stand a chance of changing their business model. When all this happens, you're going to see also a new in banking, where all of a sudden bankers will start to be irrelevant because the people they need to help, they're not helping them out. Bankers are looking at where the risk is less work for them. And private equity and VC are looking at they'll get multiple X, so they'll flood in. Development finance will flood in. Already over the last 3 weeks, I've seen a lot of PFI funds already flooding in. So all of a sudden, people are going to find new outlets to raise money. Sometimes it'll be debt, sometimes it'll be some kind of PFI fund, or be a little amount of private equity. And then what will happen is that the banks will just sit on a lot of money and will not be able to mobilize. So a lot of business models are going to change naturally. And it's just as a result of COVID-19. I see COVID-19 as a reset. It's just resetting the economies. I also agree with you that it's not just about nationalization, but it's critical that we need to look inside first before we look outside into the region.
Thanks, Andrew.
Every market in Africa, it's important you look inside first. If it's water, the manufacturers of water, there should be about 50, 60 different manufacturers. If it's Milo, if it's Nido, everything out there, Eric, and it should be self-dependent. Look, we need to, whatever we do, we're not going to grow backyard farms in the cities. Where Amma lives, you're not going to have a backyard farm. I'm sorry. Let's just be real. So whatever it is, we'll still need to go and buy food and move food. We need to start asking ourselves, eat what we can eat and can what we cannot eat. If it's simple things like eggs, well, how do you store the rest of the eggs so it doesn't go to waste?
Yeah, and meat processing units and stuff like that. Andrew, you have your presentation coming up, so I'm going to wrap up with everybody, and then we can get on to your, because we're pressed for time.
That will come up, 5,000, 6,000. Bankers need to come in and support this and take a risk. That's how markets evolve.
Right, right. Quick question, actually, that I had meant to ask. So a lot of our SMEs across the continent are necessity entrepreneurs, not because they're particularly astute at doing business, like maybe some of us, right? So that you know, it's a luxury for all of us to have been educated and exposed to a certain degree where we can actually, you know, build businesses and invest in businesses. But for the necessity entrepreneur with maybe less, you know, ability and capacity, what would be your one policy, you know, request if you were able to speak to your president today to help the necessity entrepreneur? Because I think that's where the majority of SME action actually is, beyond, you know, people like us who be having these kinds of conversations. Ammin, what are your thoughts?
Oh,
before I let you go, because I know you need to go.
Good question about our policymakers. That's a moment of truth for policymakers. My thought is that at the same time, because of this crisis, the social impact will be huge. The good policymakers, they will be okay. The bad policymakers, I don't know for them. You know, there's a level of patience that we have as African, and I think that in some cases we might reach, you know, the limit of that. I don't want to mention any country, but I think that in some countries it can be like very difficult. After for the common people, I would say that being an entrepreneur is a new normal. You are not, for example, I will give you an example and I want to be short here, but I know a lot of people in France. They were like, oh, I'm working in a bank, I'm working here, I've got a stable job and blah, blah, blah. No, man, you don't have a stable job. Anybody can fire you in 1 month or 48 hours. That's the new normal. You don't have a job for 25 years or 30 years. That was a fairy tales that we learned when we were younger, when we were like 15 or 10. Everybody in this discussion now, even as an employee, you're just a freelance that is giving its time for a certain amount of money at the end of the month. But you cannot make plans in a company for the next 20 years. This is over. That was the past. Now you have to be. You have to have the soft skills we've talked about. You have to be educated. You have to find a way to educate yourself. You have many ways to do that, and really to be having this agile mind to navigate in that situation. And being an entrepreneur, I think that it's going to be the normal situation. Even in hiring people, you will want to hire people that have this, at least a little bit of mindset of entrepreneurship, to be able to do those massive pivots during crisis time.
Thanks, Ammin. Thank you.
So encouraging education, education first.
Yeah, mindset. Yeah, it's fundamental. Okay, Erick, Yong.
Well,
and then we go to Erick Osiakwan after.
Well, I think that we need to prepare and help the SMEs to be able to integrate interesting value chains in Africa that are going to be set up by African to serve the African market. And I think that that is the most important thing that I believe the focus should be onto. And to do that, we need to favor the development of ecosystems that allows entrepreneurs to identify those value chains, identify where there is a space, being able to read them better, and that their options are to bring solutions that facilitate and that limited the frictions that our actual value chains have. And that will be for me an interesting move, because this crisis will lead every countries, every continent to look at themselves. The crisis is going to hit hard US, Europe, Asia, and they're going to try to fix their own environment, which is normal. In Africa, I think that since we are in the process of constructions, this crisis gives us, I don't know who mentioned it, but it gives the opportunity to the government to do things faster, integrate technology faster, and also build on all these young entrepreneurs that are ready to, they do business because by necessity, but they're looking for area where the business will make sense. And if there is not a clear infrastructures and a clear ecosystem that shows them where are the key value chains that create value for the countries, they will put their effort not on the right channel. And I think that marking those paths for the entrepreneurs, it's a key, and for me, it's a responsibility that has to be taken so that the general effort goes in the same direction.
Excellent, excellent. I think that's really in line with some of the stuff that we're trying to do with ScaleUp, to just align big business with small business and integrate in some of the value chains, as well as offer sort of models that people could just plug into and maybe be part of. Thanks so much, Eric. Erick, so what are your last words? And then we go on to Andrew's presentation.
Well, so I think that, introspection becomes what every policymaker sits down today and kind of think about. And I think that what is going to be critical is how we build a path out of this. And I think that path is going to be predominantly focused on the resilient businesses that survive the wave. But most importantly, how do you create a scaling effect for these businesses by policy action? And here I don't talk about policy, I talk about policy action, because I think that for a very long time, we've had very good policies in Africa and Ghana and everywhere else, but we need to see some action, right? If it's about reducing tariffs, it's about creating tax efficiencies, it's about eliminating the barriers to, regional trade. We need to see some more speedy action. And I think that this is going to be very critical going forward. And so I think that is something that will become very...
Erick, you're on mute. You've gone on to mute, Erick.
Hi, buddy.
To take. And I think that for entrepreneurs, I used to believe that the opportunity here is not only to sort of pause and look at how you execute on your business, but also to look a little bit more beyond the markets that you're paying attention to and begin to think more regionally, if not globally. So, for survival entrepreneurs, and I believe that we are all survivors, because the reality is that necessity is the mother of invention, right? So people care to do this stuff because there's just a necessity. So I believe that it comes down to the sustainable business models that we've talked about. And if you have spent time building those sustainable business models, you will survive this time.
Right. Top tips, guys. Thank you so much for all your insights. But I think it's all about, essential services, looking to people's needs and starting from scratch and starting from basics, basic needs, creating new marketplaces and keeping your business models very sustainable. So Andrew, are you ready to share your screen so we can see your presentation?
Sure, 1 second.
Okay. Great.
Unfortunately, as I said, I've got another meeting. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you for the audience following the conversation. Thank you for the expertise of Andrew, Erick, and Erick. Still great to see you guys. So I hope to see you and discuss with all of you very soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Ammin. We'll catch up soon.
Ammin.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Ammin.
Bye.
See you in virtual New York.
Guys, keep your questions coming, okay? Because Andrew's presenting now, but we'll have a short Q&A at the end of the presentation.
Okay, so Amma, may I go ahead?
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks a lot, guys. And I suppose for me, the conversation was about practical business planning and how to build business models that will be resilient in the future and now. What I did was to break my presentation into two. So I'm talking about planning the business, and then on the other hand, building the resilience into it. And then what I'll do is I'll take you through a case study and then give you an assignment as instructed to do so. So I think for me, and again, this is very interactive, by the way. So the first thing that I think it's critical are these sets of preambles, right? The first one is, let's not be emotional. Anytime you go into business or you want to go into a business, don't be emotional and be very decisive. Be ready to make decisions, okay? A lot of time I find that we tend to be indecisive. We go back and forth a lot. What you can do is build for yourself a council of advisors, not more than 2 or 3, because then that also sets you back. And I'll quote a verse from the Bible that says that in the multitude of counsel there is safety, which is probably why presidents have advisors and all of that. Have experienced people you can bounce things by, but above all, be very intuitive, because they might have the experience, but they might not have that intuition you have as an entrepreneur as well. Erick gave an example of eCampus and how fantastic this guy is. I know him, very, very fantastic guy. You want to put your money behind a guy like that. At the end of the day, a guy like that will be very intuitive, so he'll make a decision. When I was going into Zeepay, without mentioning names, but there are very serious branded names in this country and the world who told me flat out, this is not going to work. Forget it, don't waste your time. Today, I'm sure they see our success and they celebrate with us. So that's my first thing. And the next thing I want to also advise is always match your cost with profit boot for boot. So what do I mean by that? If your cost is 2 cities and your profit is maybe 50 pesos, make sure that you rethink that model. And at any point in time, if you're not profitable, then make sure that your cost versus your return is at par. In that way, you don't lose money. You don't gain money, but you don't lose money. You stay afloat. And you can do that through a lot of partnerships as well. Then the other thing is have a strong governance. So a lot of time when we're starting businesses, we tend not to focus on governance. But in my experience, focusing on governance from day one has been phenomenal, fantastic. And one of the best things you can do is to make sure you have the right set of board members. So you don't need an all-star cast, but you need experienced people in the board. You need about 2 or 3 people who are experienced. Then always make sure you have an evangelist board member. The evangelist board member might not be experienced, but very stickler by the book. Did you do this? Have you done this? Make sure this is done. They can be annoying, but hey, they help you in moments like these. Because of all the things that we insist on, you'll be able to overcome them when you come to moments like these. Then the other thing I also want to advise is invest a lot in the business in the early stage. So entrepreneurs, we do this a lot. We put in equity. We put in maybe $2 million, $3 million, $500,000, whatever we put in our own resources. We want to take it out as quickly as possible. Don't be in a rush to take it out. Invest in the business. As you see return comes in, if it's talent, develop talent. Develop talent, we put them in the right training programs. Maybe make sure they have the right skills and set. If it's tools, invest in the tools. If it's even a simple laptop, invest in a laptop. Sometimes these investments will pay off, and they pay off in a very interesting way in time. Okay, and that's been my story so far. And then have a $1 for 2 principle. So it's not 2 but 4. A $1 for 2 principle means that for every $1 you spend, you want to get $2 back. You must have this, you must be anal about this. If I'm going to spend $1, I'm going to get $2 back. So if it's a talent and I'm going to pay you, and you're going to burn hours for me. And you're going to burn effective, efficient hours. That's what we mean by $1 for 2. If you're going to buy water, that water should be able to serve 1 million people and give you a return. Just have that principle. If you have that principle, everything you do, you're working towards profitability. It's a very anal attitude, but hey, it gets you there. Okay, so that's sort of the first preamble. Then the other thing that I think you also need to do is business processes should be documented. A lot of time we have processes, but we don't document them. When we're a startup, our staff keep them in their mind, they keep them on their fingertips, but that's very dangerous because when people leave you, they leave you with the IP. If you're paying them salary, or if you have a partnership or equity arrangement, then you got to retain that IP in the business. IP is intellectual property. So what you do is document it, even if it's about the process of opening the door. When you come in, you must open the door at 6 a.m. When you open the door, you must clean. When you clean, you must put the computer on. Document that process. You are building history, you are building processes within the business. Okay, but more so is around the compliance activities. When you do things like that, you're starting to document your compliance process. You're starting to document your operational processes. Even if it's a half page, 1 page, in time you start to scale it. It becomes 5 page, 20 page, 30 page, it becomes a full-blown document. So that's another advice I give to everybody. And this is all part of planning that business, making sure that that business will sustain itself because you're putting the right prerequisites in the business. You need to understand your business and document what the potential disasters are and how they would impact you and your business. So a lot of time, Amma gave an example, I've sort of missed out on the technical word you use, but about aspirational businesses and businesses that go in because they understand what they're getting into. Unfortunately, we tend to have aspirational businessmen, a lot of aspirational businesses and a lot of me too, copycat businesses, okay? So they do not understand the business they are in very well. And even we who are into the right businesses because we're strategic, we still do not understand our business environment very well. You need to take time, sit down and understand what is the potential disaster. So if you're a fintech, if there's a downtime, what will happen to you? Of course, clearly you need to have a backup. Backups can be expensive, and then you start to think about partnerships. But when you're backup, what can happen to your backup also? So this is sort of just giving you very overarching definitions of understanding of what I mean by that. But you need to make sure you understand your business and how it can be impacted. One of the things that happened in COVID-19, look at Airbnb. I'll give you Airbnb is a perfect example. If you look at Airbnb, 99% of the model was focused on room rentals within homes, right? But if you come to our part of the world, there's another model of Airbnb, which is actual apartments and properties that people are put into Airbnb and others can rent. If Airbnb had taken the trouble to understand their business model very well, and it's the impact of the global community, anything that can happen to them, maybe they would have had a model around also single units. And therefore, they would have grown that as well significantly. Maybe that might be about 40% of the portfolio. So in that regard, if they get a shock like this, their business will still sustain itself. Because irrespective of COVID-19, you can stay in a single unit home. The issue is you don't want to share a property with someone. So yes, today you're saying that medical staff can live in Airbnbs for free, etc. But they are still at risk. They're still exposed. So I think that that sort of gives you a good understanding of what I mean by trying to understand what can impact on your ecosystem and documenting it. And then you can now come back and build the resilience or the sustenance to support that. Then you need to articulate what you need to do in response to point 7, but I guess I've talked about that. The planning is what allows you to articulate what you need to do. Okay. Sorry, so I'm going to go to my next slide. Then understand your cost profile and know your unit return on service offering. So I think that it's important that we understand our cost profiles. We must understand every single cost profile that we have on our business. So if you take if your return is $5 as an example, okay, you must understand the cost profile on that $5 to the T. You must really, really get so granular. Use big data, use the data available to you, because then you know what you are reserving, even if it's a cent, and you know how long it's going to take you to reserve that, and what you have to do to make sure that that reserve is built. More so in these times that we've experienced COVID-19, it's become critical to think from that perspective. Like I said, it's in now. You almost lose your family, you lose your friends. All you do is live this life. But in 5 years, it will pay off if a pandemic doesn't happen. Now, based on your unit cost, do the following. Once you've understood that, every month, set aside your salaries the month before. Set aside your unit return to mitigate potential disasters. So you figured out what your potential risk could be. Then you now decide how much I can put aside to do that. You'll never be able to do this to the T, but at least you come into a fiscal regime, and therefore you have a certain amount of planning around that. Okay, and like I said, it's a very anal approach to doing things, but hey, maybe that's where the survival is. In the first 1 to 2 years, avoid employing salary staff if you can. So if you can, as much as possible, focus on contract staff. Focus on sort of packaged agreement with people. So people know that they come into your space and they're not going to be on full-time employment. They're going to be on a certain type of contract. But when the business scales, their lifestyle will change or their status will change. It's important because if you're not careful, you're going to pick up a lot of people. You have to do pay as you earn. You have to do SNIT. You have to do tier 2. It becomes a huge burden on the business if you're trying to do all the things I've listed in the other points. So these are some of the little things you can do the first year and year or two to survive. Some people even do it to year 3 and year 4, but of course, you also can't do that for too long. You got to give back to your community. In your planning, always maintain a fiscal discipline, which is one of the things I've talked about. But every penny you make, send it to the bank. So if today, even if you're in a restaurant business and you made 5 cedis today, take the trouble of sending it to the bank. Make sure you spend directly from the bank. It helps you in 3 ways, in my opinion. The first thing is it makes you see what you're bringing into the business. But the second thing also is that it also gives you a certain discipline, not to think that, oh, some will come tomorrow, so let me spend this one today. Then about what makes the banker also see what you're doing with the business. So the banker starts to see the growth and respect you. Unfortunately, the realm we're in, banks don't come in at the start. It's very rare. 1 out of 20 or 40 or 100 cases they come in. So these are the things that help you to tell a story. Everything in life is about telling a story and being able to tell the best story. Amma, may I continue? Amma, should I continue?
Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead,
Okay.
Andrew. Thank you.
Now, in terms of resilience, I think the resilience will be built through consistency and a step-by-step playbook. So I'm in the world of fintech. I'm in the startup world. We call it playbook. Playbook is how you do things consistently to be able to have a strong model that you can replicate in anything or everywhere you go. Okay, that is done through consistency. You got to be consistent. So if this is your practice and it's working for you, don't change it. Don't tweak your model so quickly because others are doing ABC. Your model is the way it is because of how you are and who you are. A part of it is designed around you, the entrepreneur yourself, and the culture you built. So just maintain that in the initial stages. How do you build? So I think the first thing is you need to identify your objective. Okay, so you want to build a resilient business model. A lot of time we just say, oh, I'm going to do this. But sit down really and identify your objective. What are you seeking to achieve? Okay, articulate your business model once you've done that. Then decide on your approach, and I'll explain further. I think Laura, the further presentation does that. Articulate all of this. Then when you finish, decide on the approach you're going to use. So this is what I'm going to give you an example of building a business model. Okay, so I've decided that, look, I want to go into the business of, for example, renting rooms to people who travel. I'm looking at a certain group of people who travel possibly every month. They're in the low to middle income bracket. At work, they are sort of in the middle. They are not the senior executives. They are budget travelers. They need to get in. They need to get a good room. They need to have a good beer, a good drink, and go for a meeting the next morning. Possibly 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings. Come back, have a shower, jump on the plane, and leave. Okay, so I'm clear that this is my objective. Then I want to articulate a model that will bring them in and at the same time give me sustenance. So I say to myself, look, I want to build affordable luxury. Okay, so I'm not going out there and say I'm going to go and deploy or design a business model that company X or company Y did or used. I'm going to develop my own model that works for me. And my model, I've done my research, and I feel like this group of people, they want affordability in it, but they also want luxury. So the days when they will just come and sleep on a hard mattress in a dingy place will not work. They want to come into a place where there's affordable luxury. They have a clean room. It's on a high street. So a high street, for example, could be, if you guys know, I have such limited knowledge. If you know, for example, airport, National Service Secretariat, that road, okay, that is a high street. There's a major street, people pass, etc. So that person probably wants to be on a high street. They want to have some availability in terms of 24-hour service. There should be a pool, etc. So my affordable luxury is, I'm not going to be a 3-star hotel. I'm just going to be a metro hotel. I'm going to be on a high street, but I'm going to make sure that I have a swimming pool in that place, so that all of a sudden I'm attracting the guy. He understands that, yes, he will get affordability, but there are some luxuries. The luxuries that you have a swimming pool, okay? I'm going to have a business center. I'm going to make sure he has a home away from home experience. Now, what is my approach to do that? So my approach to do that will be partnerships, will be technology. So for example, I don't even need to call Uber and say, Uber, I want to have a partnership with you. I have a simple app. When you're booking your hotel, it's linked to Uber. So when you arrive, you just have to click a button and Uber is waiting for you. That experience is wow. The guy said, oh wow, when I got there was an Uber waiting for me. But it's just leveraging technology and partnerships, right? I'm not going to invest in a restaurant at my metro hotel. I'm going to go out there and find a restaurant or a coffee shop that wants to expand, and I'm going to say, come in and have a place in my hotel. I'm not going to make that investment. You are making that investment. I'm going to gain, you're going to gain. My customer will have an experience, you have an experience. Because I want affordable luxury, I'm going to make sure that my customer is not paying premium, okay? So that gives me that leverage. I'm going to go to a bedding company and say, look, Una Homes, wow, you've got lovely beddings, etc., etc. How do I partner with you so that when my customer comes, they can have clean sheets or a laundry? I can go to Whiteside, I can go to Laundry Shop. I say, look, I want to partner with you. So when my customer is only paying for a room, and that room, he only gets a towel a day. Okay, if he wants additional clean towels, etc., he pays an extra 5 cents or 10 cents or $1. Whatever it is, everybody in the ecosystem is winning. I have built an infrastructure and I've leveraged an ecosystem to make that infrastructure monetize. Okay, so this is sort of to just give you an idea of how to build your models. Okay, and when you do this, you start to see a return out of it. I go to a furniture company and say, look, you are not selling. Why don't we have a partnership? Give me beds. I'll take 10 beds from you, but out of the 10 beds, every day I pay you this, $1 a day for people to sleep or whatever. But in that way, I've again invested in an infrastructure and I've got partners to come in. It's a whole ecosystem. My model is going to work. I just use this from an industry, but it's not limited to the industry I've used. It cuts across. It's really just for you to sort of pick the sense of the thinking and the thought process in going out there to achieve what you want to achieve. Okay, so a lot of time, the light bulb here is you don't need money. You need the right thinking, you need the right approach, the right partnerships. A lot of time we focus too much of our attention on having money, but it's not money. It's about partnerships. It's about having It's about having the right partnerships. It's about thinking through that process and saying, I'm going to lose 30-40% of potential margin, but I'm going to grow and I'm going to be sustainable. And in 5 or 3 years, I will come out of my valley of death, I will scale, and I'll have a business that will stand. So it's really being able to have that 360 degrees approach. Okay. Now, if you've done all of that, then you've got to also think about survival. So here, I think that our moderator wanted us to also talk about some of the planning approaches that one could use in moments like these for survival. Okay, and as a business, one of the things I'll say to you is be subjected to very strong governance. governance is painful. I personally think governance is the most painful thing you can subject yourself to. There's nothing more painful than being an entrepreneur and yet people refer to you as if, in fact, let's put it this way, there's nothing more painful than being an owner manager and then you come to work or you go to a board meeting and you are reporting yourself to other people. The most painful part is when you have to report yourself to 1% shareholder. But that reality will make your business stand. Okay, that reality will take you away from arrogance, it's me, to we, to how do we take it there for shareholder value. Okay, one of the things that helped us a lot is to have a business continuity plan, which required us to have a pandemic response plan. Of course, being in other jurisdictions like the UK, it was a necessity anyway. Little do we know that there would ever be a day that we would have to kick the pandemic response in. So here I'm giving you a proper example of how we survived our pandemic. Okay, how so far we have survived COVID-19 from an experience perspective. Under our continuity plan, we're supposed to have two teams, which is the core team and then the backup team. The backup team was called the PRP team. So the idea was that they are actually the ones responding to the pandemic. The core team was supposed to stay in safe houses anytime there's a problem. So we had safe houses with partnerships with third-party providers. So we have third-party providers who actually have residences for us on demand. And so in times like these, we can use them. So what we did was we broke ourselves into teams, two teams. The PRP team will go home. The core team are the people that whatever happens, we need them to be alive. We need them in the business for the business to work. Because we also realize that if we go and work from home, in totality, there'll be too much disruption on the business. And our model is designed in such a way that we can handle the human disruptions against the technology, because there's a human element. You need the bank, you need service delivery, you need to support the customers, etc. So we did that. The core team were put into a quarantine environment, what we call a safe house, and so they'll be able to simulate the same environment at work at home, and they'll use carpooling to come to work, and therefore we're building an immune system together in a common place. So far, so good. It's worked very well for us. We didn't have external interactions during this period, and so our business was successful. People had to move. The disruption is that they have to move from the comfort of their homes, from the comfort of their experiences. But for us, the way our business is designed, as part of our BCP, everybody uses a laptop. As part of a BCP, everybody has a phone that you can port from. Okay, it's also one of the strategies why we have a lot of young people, so that if we have these issues, we can pull them away from their everyday lives. So it was easier to respond to the situation at hand than if we had a lot of married people, etc. So to be quite honest, there was only about 3 of us who couldn't stay in the safe house because of our external life. But then the protocol was that we have to apply to the same protocols as the guys in the safe house. And then we made sure we live by those standards. In direct response to banks closing their branches, which we knew would happen as a way of curtailing the spread of COVID-19, we also had a program that allows us to divert traffic immediately onto our network. So under our BC program, one of the things we did was we shortened the integration time. We knew partners will come who want to integrate and go live immediately. So we shortened our integration time from 3 days to 1 day, just to be able to onboard a few more partners. Out of that, we're able to onboard a few more partners. We also had a backup plan. So we actually have a cloned environment, which is in a redundant zone, and therefore we're able to fall onto it. There was one of the days our traffic surged so much, we hit about 12,000 transactions in a day. To be honest with you, we've never had that experience. We're not ready for that. But that was at the height at which the banks had shut down most of their branches. So again, we're able to move into redundancy. It simply means that we had to spend about 1 to 2 hours with our partners, some of them to change URLs to be able to move on to the new traffic point. But it's working fine, everybody is happy. Disruption, very minimal, probably about 5% disruption on the quality of service. So these are some of the things we did to be able to also accommodate the pandemic that hit us. In the absence of questions and understanding, what I would also want to do is to sort of move into a task. okay, a mini task that maybe you can work on. I'm very happy to assist and guide to the extent that I can, those on the call. And I think that we also did as part of our pandemic response is to actually have what we call a COVID-19 statement, because we realize that it's important to boost the confidence of the outside community, outside our environment. And don't forget, we're very, very global. We have a lot of global clients. In fact, 99% of our clients are global clients, out of which about 55% are blue chip. So they already have protocols on the other side they need to meet. So we quickly issued our pandemic response statement. We shared it with our regulator, in this case, Bank of Ghana, SC in the UK. We put it on our website. We shared it with our bank partners. We shared it with every critical partner, and we're very transparent on what we're doing and how we're doing it. It's been quite expensive. Our reserve fund could only take us for the first 4 weeks. Post that, we had to tap into P&L to be able to do that. But at least we're still here. We've experienced a beautiful surge, and it's also forced us to innovate the business again. So we actually have a new pandemic response innovation, which we'll introduce to the market at some point. Now, in terms of my mini task I have, I want you to sit down, go back and review my presentation, and design and articulate a business model during and post the pandemic, and then let us talk about it. You can use your own business if you want, and I'm available to help. I've put an email here. That's Gloria's email, but I'm also available. Amma can share my email and my phone number. But I am challenging myself. One of my own realizations in this period of lockdown, although I haven't locked down the whole period, is how to give back to the community more and more. I realize that the more of us that exist, the safer it is for our economy. And this is something I challenge everybody on this call. If you have a business, think about that. If you're a leader, think about that. The more of all of us, the better it is for all of us. Because when we go into total lockdown and there's no employment and no reserves, the backlash is huge. Crime. Look, you have no idea the huge backlash. So we need to think from that perspective. So take my mini task, do that, and let's get it going on. If you have any questions, also I'm available to respond to the extent that my operator allows us to do that.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That was so insightful and full of a lot of examples, which is what we wanted. So thank you so much for talking about business resilience, and I'd encourage everyone to take the mini task very seriously, just to help you within your own business as you try and cope with what's happening at the moment. So I think, Olivia, I'll hand over to you so that you can manage us out of the call and maybe take 1 or 2 questions, because we're actually over time.
Yeah.
So Andrew, do you have time for a couple of minutes? Eric
Okay,
and Eric? Sure. Yeah.
We'll literally take sort of maybe two questions.
Sure.
Just before we move on to that, Andrew, please, a number of participants have asked for a copy of the presentation, so please make that available so we're able to share that with them. Thank you so much.
Okay, Amma has it though, right?
Yeah,
but yeah, we can send it.
Great.
And it will be uploaded onto YouTube as well, so you can watch it again. So yeah, we'll share that today.
Super. I've got one question from Bex Nwadwudu. He is CBO Investment Management and MoneyReady.net. Do the panelists think that African businesses can fill the export space made by any diversification or anti-China sentiment in the West?
I think we covered that one earlier, Olivia.
Really? Okay. All right, no problem.
Yeah.
The second one is from Clara from WUSC, Ghana. We are an NGO and want to make investments in some businesses in Ghana and some other countries. We're still exploring, and I want to get your perspectives on some types of businesses you think we can invest in.
Yeah, I think we've talked about essential services and sustainable services, stuff like food, healthcare, financial services, stuff that people need to survive day to day. Water. These are all essential services that people need regardless of lockdown or any economic activity. So I think those are the ones that we should be looking at, and obviously genuinely tech enabled as well. I think Eric was trying to say something. Erick Osiakwan.
No, I was saying that when it comes to tech, sort of the three classification we gave. So like you can look at virtualized businesses, which we think are businesses that we're doing well in this time, and then sort of mobility business that are really challenging. But sort of the middle ground is the business between mobility and virtualization, right? And happy to sort of give some more feedback on how we see that in our portfolio.
Well, also, I think because it's an NGO, it also depends upon appetite and what they want to spend. I would go back to food safety and say, look, eat what you can what you can't. So if it's small processes that they can invest in for 5,000, 6,000, do you see what I mean? Even simple packaging ketchup for food is amazing.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm thinking unless there are any further questions from our attendees, we're kind of coming around to a close. It's been a really great session. If you have any further questions, please email us at scaleupprogram@gmail.com, and we'll be able to either connect you directly with the speakers, or if you have any specific questions, please share that with us and we'll be able to guide and assist you. But yes, in essence, thank you so much to everybody. Thank you to our panelists, Andrew, Erick, Amma, our amazing coordinator, and also Ammin, who's obviously, he's had to go to another meeting. Thank you so much. Please keep your eyes open on majority of the platforms that we're on. We'll be sharing our next webinar with you in the next day or so. The video and the presentations will be available on YouTube in the next day or two, so please keep an eye out for that.
I need to pay homage to Grace. I just realized you're online. Grace.
Grace from APSA.
Yes.
Amazing Grace. Oh, I see you. Yes.
Amazing Grace.
Hey, Andrew.
Amazing Grace. Hi. How are you, Grace? Thank you so much, guys. Andrew will be in touch about the fund. Okay, I think that's a really good suggestion, and Erick as well.
We should do that.
Follow up with everyone.
Give a shout out to my buddy Stefan Brabant. Stefan has been he's been an LP in a lot of funds, PE funds in Africa for a very long time. Very quiet guy, but I see him on as well. I think
Thank you so much.
Quietly. Stefan sits out in London. Is very bullish on the continent for many years. A lot of the big PE funds he was allocating to them many years ago.
Right. Thank you so much for joining, Stephen.
Thank you, guys. Truly appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day.
We'll be in touch.
We'll be in touch.
Much appreciated. Thanks, guys.
Erick, I'm calling you. Bye, guys.
Bye.